inspired by this because today we are having blizzard conditions. So even some recipes call for it, some don't. And sometimes just using your good old hands, put it in the crust, that worked perfectly well too. I just thought that basil seasoning, something like this, but that's okay.
Is this one I should repeat?
Hey friends, welcome to the kitchen. I'm so glad you're here today on this blistery, wintry day. So I'm going to be bringing you a recipe that we're going to kind of just make up. I won't have an actual link or a specific recipe for you to follow. This is just something to give you inspiration. I am participating in the Pantry challenge, so I'm trying to use up everything that is in the freezer and in my cabinets. But if you're watching this later and you're not participating in any sort of Pantry challenge, you can still be inspired by this because today we are having blizzard conditions. So even if I wanted to get out, I could not. So sometimes we have days like that, and we have to learn to adapt recipes and learn to cook with what we have, whether it be in the middle of winter, like it is for me here on the farm today, or maybe in the summer, but you know, someone can't drive because they just had some sort of an outpatient surgery, or maybe you're just trying to save money and use what you have. Whatever the reason, I hope that today's video inspires you to make do with what you have. So I decided I wanted to make some pizza because I've got some caprese salad, which is your mozzarella cheese, your tomato, and your vinegar with balsamic glaze type things. So I've got that ready and left over from a previous gathering, and I thought, how can I use that? We're not eating it as the salad. And sometimes after you put the oil and the vinegar on there, the tomatoes start, getting a little bit soft. And I thought, how can I use it? Well, I want to bake with it. So today we're going to make pizza. I have 3 of these little mini Crust already made pizzas. I believe this was an Aldi's brand. So I'm just using them because that's what's in my cabinet and we need to get them used up. We're not really eating very many carby recipes anymore. The farmer's doing the no sugar, no grain right now. The farmer's son is kind of following along. The farmer's wife is trying her best. And the farmer's daughter is just doing whatever. So I'm going to put those in the oven. And then I also have some cauliflower that I purchased from Sam's Club a long time ago. And I have just the 1 packet left. Okay. Well, it's a 12-ounce packet. However, any recipe I found online calls for at least 2 of those 12-ounce packets. Then I looked up some recipes that use just almond flour. So I've got a nice big bag of almond flour, and I'm kind of morphing a couple of different recipes, and we're just going to come up with something new today. So come along and let's get busy. First, I just want to poke a few holes in this cauliflower bag, put it in the microwave for about 8 minutes to let it get good and soft. So while we've got our cauliflower in the microwave, I went ahead and turned our oven on to 450 degrees. And I've got just some bits and pieces of onion, pepper, and mushrooms. And I thought I would go ahead and chop those up and prepare those for toppings that we'll use here in a bit. What a colorful topping we will have. I know I said 8 minutes, but my microwave did the quick at 5 or 6, so it's actually been 6 minutes. You'll need to grab yourself a cloth. Cheesecloth, doubled up, tripled, works great. I have myself here a very well-loved but clean cloth, something I've used for cheese making and all kinds of things like this. But when you use things, they do get stained and they sometimes look dirty, but it's not, I promise. So because this is a little too hot, I've got it here in the bowl. There's a strainer inside here. I put the cloth on top of the strainer, and I'm going to let this just kind of cool for a minute, just like this. Now we can get to the cauliflower. And what I'm going to do is, now that it's cooled down a little bit, We can see there is liquid in there already, but there is so much more. So we're going to take our bag, we're going to wrap it, and we're going to squeeze. It's hot. Squeeze. Might have to wait a little bit longer to let it cool a little bit more. I'm going to squeeze as much liquid out as I can. And because I have the colander in there, I can actually push on it. Our oven has preheated. All by might, I'm pushing that in there. And I bet there is half a cup to a cup of liquid in there. This should kind of come out in a clump. I may not have squeezed quite enough. You know, I get a little impatient, but we're not going to admit that. I do think I got quite a bit of it out. Let's start building our pizza crust. We're going to grab a cup of our almond flour. The recipes were all over the place with this. This is where I am comfortable with. I want to add 1 cup to the 1 bag. I think that's going to give us a substantial crust that way. I'm using Parmesan cheese. Some recipes call for it, some don't. I'm going to try to measure out, about a cup is what I've got today. So that's what we're going to use. I also saw recipes that used anywhere from 1 to 3 eggs. 3 duck eggs, we're going to use those. I'll crack in those eggs. Now, if you want to be super frugal, save your eggshells, rinse them out, and put them in the oven, bake them in the oven, dry them out, and you can use them in your garden, or if you happen to have ducks and chickens like I do, feed them back to them for extra calcium. Either way, they are a great natural source of calcium. And then to that, you can separate and do all kinds of seasonings, but today, I'm just going to use this already made Italian seasoning, and I'm going to guess I'll probably put in close to a tablespoon. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. This is just going to give it a little extra flavor because on this pizza, we won't be using any pizza sauce because a lot of the store-bought pizza sauces already have sugar. They have sugar in them. So we don't want to do that. And just like that, it's mixed. You can use this kind of Parmesan, but because I had the other, I wanted to use it. It melts better. The other kind is got a lot of anti-caking agents and stuff like that in it, and so it's not really a meltable cheese. Parmesan itself really isn't anyway, but especially the powdered kind. So I was hesitant. Do I want to use this one or this one? And although I do think it would all fit on this one, I'm going to use the bigger. This is my well-loved Pampered Chef Stone that I've had for years. So I do not need to oil it. I get every last bit out of here. And I think that this will be enough to likely serve 2 of the family members. We're going to try our best here to make a crust. And we're going to spread this out. It's stickier than the last one I made. I've tried making cauliflower crust before, and I did not take the step of squeezing out the water. I think I used fresh cauliflower, and I didn't squeeze it out. So, hoping for a different result this time. We're going to use our hands. I'm going to put a little oil on here. That is the only way I am going to get this to really spread out good, I think. But I have found sometimes just using your good old hands is the best tool around. I just want to get a nice even layer. This time I think I'm going to spray the actual crust. There, that worked a little bit better. I am so glad that I went ahead and chose the bigger one because the farmer loves a thinner crust, and I think that thin is good with this because you kind of want that crispy crunch. You don't want a soggy crust, which can happen with the cauliflower. I do think that the almond flour is going to really help, though, as a binding agent along with the 3 eggs instead of just 1. Then we're just going to stick this in the oven and let it crisp up. We need to completely bake this before we even think about getting it ready for the toppings. And one thing about using those hands is you can tell easier on whether or not you've got a spot that's a little too thick or a little too thin. You can kind of feel that. I'm going to take some sea salt and just grind on top. If you want to put it in the crust, that works perfectly well too. I just thought this might help if it would draw out any moisture and it would happen to be on top the pizza, then we could dab it off if that becomes an issue. Just thinking ahead. Into the oven this goes for 15 minutes. While the cauliflower crust is in the oven, there's no reason we can't get started on these other ones. I'm going to take some olive oil, if I can find it, and we're going to spritz these crust. Now, this is something my sister actually taught me to do, and it kind of helps put a barrier on that crust, I guess. I don't know. And we're going to use these little packets that came with it, and yes, it has oils and sugars and things that not everybody in the family is wanting to consume right now. I'm going to put one of these packets on each pizza. I did end up having to cut one of the pizzas in half to just make it fit on our pan a little bit better, but that's okay. I'm not worried about that because you're going to cut it to serve it anyway, right? Today is all about making things work. Our spatula and spread that out. These aren't perfect little pizzas, but I mean, they'll fill bellies. It's just a nice thin layer of pizza sauce. And then just top your pizza however you want. We are just going to kind of, I think, grab a little of this and a little of that and put on there. And I'll try to take advantage of these halve pieces so that we could make some a little different. I love tomatoes on mine. The farmer's not a huge tomato fan. So we'll just do the tomato and cheese on this half. And I'm going to put just a little bit of the mozzarella on each of these. I almost forgot we have mushrooms. And we have a big old thing of pepperoni. We like to just kind of snack on that around here. Because we're huge cheese lovers, we're also going to get some cheddar cheese out. And this Parmesan, sprinkle a little on top. And now these are ready to go in the oven whenever the other is ready. Out of the oven. Doesn't that look beautiful? It's got a nice brown crisp from the cheese. I really think it was a good decision that we went ahead and put that cheese in there. We're not going to put any sauce on this, so I'm going to go ahead start with our cheddar cheese just to kind of ensure that things are going to stick. And all this, I'm just going to put it on there. We're going to have a very veg heavy pizza with the cauliflower and the tomatoes and onions and peppers and mushrooms, but it is going to be really tasty, I am sure. Sprinkle on squares of mozzarella with that basil seasoning, or with the oil and vinegar. Finish it off with a little more cheddar cheese. I said the word basil, but see, I've got this little tub of basil that my sister brought over and used with the caprese salad. She didn't need hardly any of it, and I have been using this basil on so much stuff. But we're going to put a little of that on top for a little extra Italian flair. Now, you don't have to put meat on there, but if I didn't, I think the boys would rebel. So I'm going to be very generous with the pepperoni pieces because tomatoes are not really a big thing that they're huge fans of. So I will spoil them with lots and lots of pepperoni. They do warn you not to load up the pizzas too high. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how not to load up my pizzas. And because I had to get back in the fridge, I went ahead and grabbed the cheese. And we're going to put another layer of that. I wish I had some more Parmesan, but I don't. So that's okay. So in here we have layered 3 kinds of cheese. We're going to finish this off with the powdery stuff. I've got it. We're going to use it. You don't want to, don't. That may burn a little bit, so I don't want to get too crazy with it. This is one that I like to use more after it comes out of the oven. Speaking of oven, 10 minutes, these will go. And then we're done. That's it. Here it is. I'm really excited how this turned out. This looks really, really good. I really wish I would have had another package so that I could have made a second one like this. But that's okay. These look good too. Well, I hope this video inspired you to use up what you have. And if you find a recipe that you want to try, but you don't have all the ingredients to do what you need to do, it's okay. It's okay to change recipes. And I hope that this encouraged you to do that, to do just that. Don't go out and buy one little tiny ingredient. Find something that might be similar that you can use and think of different ways that you can alter the recipe. For example, I put in extra egg because I knew that would help keep it moist and bind it because I didn't have all that cauliflower. So I needed a little extra moisture. And I knew that that cheese, even though the one recipe didn't call for it, would also help crisp it up and make it delicious. So guys, until next time, bye for now.
Is this one I should repeat? Well, that's good because I didn't write down the recipe, so I'll never remember.